Well, welcome everybody. Nice to see that a few of you are still awake after both the party and the lunch. That's a good start. My name is Per Unell, as we said. I'm the CDO of XMReality, and I'm going to try to take you through this first session about how we can get fast access to AR. So, for those of you who are not familiar with XMReality, we are a Swedish company with a pretty global footprint. We have customers active in more than 30 countries around the world. We are working with some of the largest industrial corporations also in the world, companies like ABB, Bosch Rexroth, Siemens, Bombardier, and a whole bunch of others. We're also proudly working together with a lot of partners, both on the hardware side and on systems integration side. And what we're doing here is really that we're trying to help these customers to work smarter, to be more efficient, and to execute their processes in a better way using augmented reality. And the application that we're running is a remote guidance application, which is device independent. We can run on a bunch of different platforms, smartphones, smart glasses, iPads, what have you. And it's really simple to use, and one of our key features is the hands overlay function that you can see here on the screen. But that's not really the subject of today. The subject of today is actually more going to focus on how can you make money using AR. I mean, this is after all the executive track, right? We all want to make money, or our customers want to make money with AR. So if you look at the value of an AR solution, or for that matter, any solution, it's really about two things. It's about utility and accessibility. And what do I mean by these items? Well, utility, that's what we vendors typically like to talk about. All the cost savings you can have, all the customer satisfaction that's going to show up, all the increased revenue that's going to be there. And all vendors have dozens and dozens of customer studies and case studies showing that this is really great, and it is. We typically show savings in the range from 10 to 30 to 50% in various KPIs, and that's wonderful. However, you also need to make sure that utility gets to the actual users, because if we have all of this great utility but just for a small fraction of the potential users, that's not really going to help very much. So the other side of the equation is really about accessibility. Making the solution available to your users, making sure that it's easy to use so you can actually use it, that it's adapted and fit for the use case that you're trying to help, that it's scalable enough so you can actually grow to the number of users that you're looking for. And maybe a little bit weird coming from a vendor, it also has to be not too expensive, because then it just won't scale, right? So you have to see both ends of this equation. And I think that AR solutions, as any new startup technology, and I think that we tend to focus on the utility side of things first, because that's where the demo cases are. That's where we can do really cool things. And we may not neglect accessibility, but it's maybe not priority one at the beginning when you start looking into these kind of solutions. But if you really want to scale, if you really want to deliver on the promise of really helping your customers, you really need to look at the accessibility as well. So if you look at what that typically looks like, where do you go? How do you start when you have a great utility and you want to make it accessible? And I'm taking ourselves, XMReality, as an example. This is a picture of one of our first use cases. It's about mine clearance using remote guidance. And if you look at the utility, it's pretty high. If we can have one less mine exploding, everyone is super happy, right? Great value. What about the accessibility? Nah, maybe not super accessible. Not very cheap, not very portable, not very flexible for different use cases, but it's there. And I think that's where a lot of new technology starts, with a high-value application that doesn't really need or can tolerate a lack of accessibility. So if we look at where we are in accessibility then, and again, using our own products as an example, but I think it's kind of generally true for the industry. Not so long ago, this is from 2012, our solution looked like this. It's a big helmet with a helmet-mounted camera, and it's actually a game computer in a backpack that you carried around. It did what it's supposed to do, but we're not going to sell 1 million of these, are we? And it's expensive, and so on and so forth. Where are we now? Well, I think, again, not just XMReality, but the industry at large, are in a pretty good place compared to the last pictures. We all have apps downloaded from app stores. We have really powerful mobile devices able to run these apps. We have pretty slick head-mounted displays. The smart glasses have grown smaller and smaller, and there's a lot going on here. So we're in a pretty good place compared to not so long ago. But the question is, can we get even better? I think we can. And how do we get better? Well, let's look at technology and accessibility. What can technology do for us in order to get more accessible? And the first thing I want to talk about is, of course, the really tremendous development that we're seeing in both platforms and devices that are helping us doing things a lot more smart. I mean, we have on the device sides, you have smartphones, iPads. There's new smart glasses coming out every week, more or less, and getting more and more powerful. And at the same time, we're having large vendors such as Apple and Google pouring billions of dollars into developing more capable software platforms to enable us to build applications on top of these really capable devices. And that's great. So the future is bright. We can do even better AR experiences tomorrow than we could yesterday, using all of these great tools. Wonderful. There is, however, one small problem that bothers me as a vendor, and that's the fact that it's very diversified. We are running our solution today on iOS, Android, and Windows. So I'm supporting 3 different versions of the app. If I want a version on Microsoft HoloLens, that's the 4th version. If I want a version on Magic Leap 1, that's the 5th version, and so on and so forth. And obviously, this costs a lot of money for me, and it's going to cost a lot of money for my customers. And even more troublesome than the cost, I think, is that it takes a lot of time. If I want to put a new feature to market, and I want to maintain consistency of my experience across a bunch of devices, I need to implement it on a whole range of different platforms. And that's going to delay how I can get to market. So, what do I need to get past this hurdle? I would like an abstraction layer. An abstraction layer that will enable me to build build applications that can run on multiple platforms on a wide range of devices. That's really something that would help to make my AR application and everybody else's AR application more available to our users. The question is then, how do we select an abstraction layer that can help us drive accessibility and availability? And when we thought about this, we actually looked a little bit on the general software industry, how have they been doing? And the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, let's use some kind of cross-platform development tool. There's lots of those. And they can be great. They have the pros and cons. They usually tend to be proprietary, which is a bit of an issue. And they don't really solve the deployment problem. You still have to deploy apps. You still have to do stuff like that. But there is one solution that the general software industry has really been using to solve this problem, and that's the browser. You all have browsers in your devices as we speak. They are really kind of the premier cross-platform development target, if you will, today. And of course, very ubiquitous in the fact that everybody has one. They are cloud native, easy to develop cloud applications being supported by the browser. And deployment is a breeze, because you're not deploying anything. It gets downloaded when you want to use the application. So that's a really cool aspect of using the browser. Then you might consider, well, what about performance? Okay, that's pretty good these days. What about all of these cool AR features? I want to have really hot tracking and the three-dimensional drawing and stuff like that. Will I be able to do that in the browser? Or will I get a boring experience? Well, it turns out that help is on its way. There is an initiative called WebXR that's actually looking at addressing this, which is a device-independent abstraction layer for applications trying to build XR experiences. And it's geared to support both immersive devices, such as a HoloLens or Magic Leap kind of device, where you're really into the environment, but also supporting magic window kind of appearances, where you use your cell phone or your iPad to kind of look around, the way people use Pokemon Go, for example. It does support positioning, it does support rendering in 3D and so on. So it's a really interesting platform from that point of view. And since it's being browser-based, it really will have excellent accessibility. There's one small caveat though. We're not quite there yet. This is still work in progress. There is a first draft API out there. Mozilla has a browser that's working with this, that you can start developing applications, and all the big ones are investing heavily into this. If you're interested in WebXR, there is a separate seminar at 3:30, I think, in Hall 3 that you can go and have more information about WebXR. Because this is really a technology to keep track of if you're interested in being able to build XR applications in a scalable and deployable way. Well, that's great. What can we do today? I want to do something today, not in 2 years. Well, when we thought about that, we looked at a simple process as we see it from our customers. What are they using remote guidance for? What are they using our remote guidance solution for? And it turns out it's basically 3 things. It's assessing problems with the customer, it's trying to fix them, and it's sometimes inspection or audit afterwards to make sure that, yes, we have done this in the correct way. And when we talk to our customers about this, it turns out that a large portion of the value is actually in the assess phase. That's where you can really start getting value out of a remote guidance solution early. And what happens in the assess phase? Well, of course, it's about qualifying and understanding the problem. I'm standing there in my workshop, a machine is broken. I need to understand what's the problem. Do we need to send someone, or can the customer fix it themselves? If we're going to send someone, do we need spare parts? And so on and so forth. So just that first part of the service process being supported by remote guidance can deliver quite a lot of value. And it turns out in that case that accessibility is really a key feature here. Because if you're looking at the other parts, the fix part, for example, where you're sending out a service technician, you can equip them with all kinds of tools. They have a toolbox, right? They can have an app, they can have a couple of HoloLenses, they can have lots of stuff with them. But the guy out there in the workshop that realizes that, hey, the machine is broken, he's not working for you, he's working for your customer. He doesn't have your app, he doesn't have a pair of smart glasses. What does he have? He has a cell phone, at best. Well, probably he has a cell phone. So, based on this understanding that getting up accessibility for the kind of first guy who sees the problem and getting them already there to starting using remote guidance is a really key thing. So based on that realization, we decided to build a web client, which we did. We launched it Monday. So basically, it's a client that you download to your browser. You get instant access to your XMReality Remote Guidance solution. You don't need to install an app or anything like that. Which obviously give you a lot of accessibility, especially for infrequent users that would never download an app in the first place. And it gives you the ability to quickly understand and solve problems with your customers. And it's available now. And to give you a little bit more of an idea of the workflow we're envisioning, it could look something like this. We have this guy standing by the machine. It's broken. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. And we have some kind of help desk or support center somewhere. What will the guy do? Well, he will place a call to the help center and saying, hey, my machine is broken. What's next? He will get a link using an SMS or an email or something like that, typically an SMS. He will click on it and immediately get a remote guidance solution running in his browser. So we put together a short film clip to show you how this could work. So we'll try to run that now, see if it works.
Imagine what your customer could achieve with instant support. Less downtime, faster resolution, with no downloads and no preparation. Just one single call. At XMReality, we've made our remote guidance solution even more accessible. So at the first sign of trouble, one call to the help desk identifies the problem and delivers instant hands-on support. One SMS, one link, and one click instantly connect you to a world of augmented reality-enabled remote guidance support. Putting the power in your hands and solving even complex problems in seconds. With no costly traveling, no complex preparation, just the power of XMReality Remote Guidance, helping you work smarter.
So, to sum up that, XMReality Remote Guidance, the web client, instant access through a browser, no downloads, no installs, super easy user interface tailored for infrequent users. It's built to fit into your business processes and being integrated with your process support tools. And it delivers the same leading remote guidance experience as the normal app-based client would do. So you are all very much welcome to come over to booth 111 after this if you like and have a demo. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Per Unell. Is there any questions?
Clear as mud.
1, 2, 3, no questions. Then I'm going to ask, there's a question.
Hold on.
We get a mic.
Thank you. For the operator, how do you capture the end? Is it using another mobile phone or is it using a special device?
For the expert that's giving the guidance, you mean? It could be either, actually. We can use a cell phone or an iPad in that end, or you could use a Windows application with a camera mounted in a bit of a more controlled environment with better lighting and stuff like that. But both works. And if you look at the way that our customers are actually using the solution, I would say it falls into two categories. Either if you have more like a static help desk setup, you typically use the maybe more Windows-based controlled guide station kind of environment. But we also have other customers that are using it more on a peer-to-peer basis, where one engineer is helping another engineer out in the field, and they're both using cell phones. So it's a mix and match, so you can do any way you want, basically.
There's
one over there.
Hello. Is it possible for you to, for the expert to draw something, and it can be also tracked in space, so to highlight some feature?
You can make the solution maybe, so you can draw stuff on it as well. Yeah, that's possible. And you can do other things. You can share documents. You can use pointers and so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of features that you can use. Over there.
Thanks. You talked about the use case for an infrequent user where, you might have a technician who has a toolbox. The video you showed a technician who's going out, he has a toolbox, and the solution was used there. I was wondering if you could describe a use case where this would be used more for the latter use case that you described, where you, right in this situation, the technician could have the XMReality app. So I was wondering if you could describe a use case where maybe more of an infrequent user or he wouldn't have the XMReality app.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole point really with the web application. That I mean, the initial use case that we started working with, then we have an app that's installed on the cell phone, and it is a tool as any other tool that the guy can bring out in the field. But the great thing about using a web client is that you can actually send it out to people who are not prepared. I mean, the guy that calls the help desk and get this web link sent, he may never have heard about XMReality or remote guidance or anything before. And that's kind of the point, because as much as we would like everybody all over the world to have an XMReality client downloaded on the cell phone, unfortunately that's not going to happen anytime soon, I guess. But we will definitely see a situation where engineers and technicians out with the customer of the organization that you're trying to support will actually make the call and get the link, and then they can get into the remote guidance solution immediately. So it's very much aimed at that kind of infrequent users. If you are a more frequent user, you will probably use the app instead.
Right, okay. So in that scenario, the technician may have been calling the OEM. He wasn't calling the help desk for his organization. He may have been calling an OEM.
Yeah, he could have done that.
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
He may have been calling like an OEM, and the equipment supplier.
Yeah, he could do that.
Okay.
We have one over here.
Do you have some problem during the development web application in terms that you had some feature on native application and didn't successfully port to web application? So did you have some problems with implementing all the features from native to web application?
Yes, you would, and it turns out that we haven't actually tried to implement all the features. So the current web client is a it's more like for the receiving end of the guidance. You can't guide from it. You can do pointers and things like that, but you can't do hands overlay from the web client, for example. So that would be an example of a restriction that we have to place on the client in order to be able to implement it in the web browser in the first instance. It's not that it can't be done, it could, but it's not in the first release. So obviously, yes, it is a bit of a somewhat lightweight, scaled down client.
Thank you.
Maybe one more question.
Anyways, if we're running out of time, I will be in booth 111 afterwards, so if there's more questions, I'm more than happy to take them there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Per.